This is The Courage to Act, How African Youth Are Turning Climate Anxiety into Systemic Action. I am joined by Jesse David, who's coordinator for Battery Tour Africa, Esther Agaya, who's Debt for Climate and Africa Regional Coordinator of it, Edwin Makanga, who is climate justice activist, campaigns organizer and demographer, and mobilization expert. Comfort Ape Francis, who's the global coordinator for Scientist Rebellion in Nigeria, and also Ayo Fola, who is the co-founder for Eco Network Sustainability and is also a part of Rev21 in the social media space. So it's great to have you on board here with us, as it is for all of you as well. So I will at some point be asking questions from the audience, as has been happening throughout the entirety of today. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button that says Q&A. You're welcome to put any question that you would like to pose to the speakers in that, and we will do that towards the end of the session. And I suppose without further ado, I will pass over to the speakers. Who would like to go first? Any takers? Go on, Aya.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the call. My name is Ayo Fola. My name is very long, and because of that, I try to make it easy for everyone, Ayo Fola. And it's been very easy to get around that. So I'll be talking about like climate anxiety and how African youths are, turning this into systematic action. And I like to always start with my story as a person, because that way it's relatable. This is what I do everywhere I talk about climate anxiety. And when I first knew about climate change, I was 17. It was my first year in uni, at the end of my second semester in university. And a lecturer had just said it randomly, like, there's this thing called climate change, and yeah, it's a really bad thing, and you should check it out. So I went to the libraries, started reading out everything I could find, and I found it there, and I couldn't stop, because I was worried about, like, how is it possible that everybody knows that this exists and we are just looking at it like living our lives? How is there not a solution to this? Are there people around the world that are doing something about this? Is that my lecturers will know about it? What are you doing about this? Because I was thinking about it from the angle of everything that I know to be real, the people that I've known all my life, my friends, the culture that we so much preserve as Africans, or as myself, Yoruba, Nigerian, our religion that we hold as something strong. Everything could get off in, say, the next 30, 40 years. And for me, that was where anxiety started to kick in, because in fact, my friends in university told me that I was numb for about 3 days. So you understand how serious this was. So now, not meaning that I didn't talk to anybody for like 3 days. Just in my corner, I would usually go to basketball practice, but stopped going. I was always in the library or holding a book I had found interesting on it, watching all the YouTube videos that exist. I found things on Extinction Rebellion, stuff like that, and watched all the videos. And I think I like to say at this point that I think I read too much of things at the time, because my young mind could not comprehend what was going on. And because of this, I decided that I was going to do something about it, because I didn't know. I think the only way that I could have gotten out of that situation, honestly, was to just talk about it. And so I started to talk to all my colleagues about it. And somehow we were able to get everybody in the university doing a campaign, walking on the streets, told all the police officials, about what we're going to do. And for somehow that became something that everybody was talking about in school. And because I was in the basketball team, it was easy to get everybody on the streets. And I think that when I think about climate anxiety from this angle, I think it does in some way can appear as doomism. It in some ways can appear as doomism because you realize that everything that you know can just fade off if some people don't do the right thing. But in some way, it can also be a reason to find faith, because for me, knowing that every single thing that we have currently can fade off so easily, it gives me purpose to find beauty in the little things, in friendship, in the people I see. In fact, I like to put it in this way that climate anxiety has taught me to be naive, because it has taught me to see the world as a child, because I know how the little things um, matter. And from there, after doing all the action, I started to realize that doing something in my university wasn't enough. And I started to meet people, ask people questions. What's what are we going to do after this? We've done a university. How can we get across other universities? And it was at that point that I realized something very important, that as much as you've done something big on um, you've done a webinar. We are here at the Rev21 webinar. Great stuff, big stuff, a global conference. But we need to accept the ideology of, while we need to do the small things, talking to someone on the road about what's going on, we also need to understand that it takes extremely big, um, big ideas, big motivation to be able to solve what is going on. As much as the small things matter, now don't get me wrong, the small things matter, but it takes big motivation to be able to do the small things and get the level of awareness and the impact that we want to create. So I started to think, I've done this in my university. I've impacted about, at the time, 5,000 plus students on campus. How can we get this across the Nigeria? So I started talking to all the young leaders around Nigeria, sending out cold emails. And I'm sure some people on this call got some of those messages. People like Edwin in Uganda, right? So Uganda, yeah. I started sending messages to everybody at the time. Some people responded, some people didn't. And that was when I was able to meet people like Esther, Edwin. And I realized that everybody in different parts of the country at this time knew about it, and they also wanted to do something about it. So what we started to do was we now started to build like a WhatsApp group chat where everybody that we know that knows about this will then come together in a room and just talk about it. That way we would be able to get some hope, because when you live in the realities of, I think the physical impact is the physical impact of the climate crisis is terrible. But when you also think about the emotional impact it has, um, it can be really emotionally draining. So this is why we started to create communities and create um, systems that different people or different groups would come together. So from there, we're able to create a coalition of something called the African Climate Change Movement, which is like a platform that brings about, right now, we have about 75 organizations across the continent. And we are trying to figure out ways that they would create collaborations, work together. And so far, from July we've been able to create like 130 connections. So connections are like ways that different organizations meet and send messages to themselves on the platform. And yeah, this is, apart from doing the amazing work I do at Rev21, this is how my ideology on systematic action looks like. It means coming together. It means all of us talking about how scared we are about it. What are we going to do about it? And finding solutions together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayo. Yeah, all very pertinent. I think a lot of people will be able to understand what you were feeling during that. And having said that, over to Esther, if you're happy going up next.
Well, thank you very much, Ed, and to everyone for your attendance today. Again, my name is Esther, and I lead an organization in Nigeria, Eco Diversified Network, and I'm also the African Regional Coordinator for Debt for Climate. So I will be speaking from the angle of debt for climate in relation to climate anxiety, and I will be building on from what Ayo, the first speaker, has said. Well, usually when we talk about the climate anxiety, I would usually ask questions like, what keeps you up at night? You know, when you think about the climate crisis, because anxiety is mostly linked to fear of something or fear of a plan or something that you are thinking about, and then it's built up in you. So as Ayo has mentioned, you can just go numb, you can get depressed, because all of this can come in different angles. It can even make you sick. And so for me and other African young people, the climate crisis is not like an abstract or something that is just being told like a story. These are real issues that we experience daily, from unpredictable weather that is affecting farmland, or flooding experiences, like Nigeria is facing flooding year in and year out. And it's been noted everywhere that Africa contributes less than 4% of global emissions, but yet we are told to repay debt while facing the worst impact of climate crisis. And to me, that is not just anxiety. It is not something that is keeping us up at night, but it is clearly an injustice. And the system we are fighting is basically on climate disasters that hit African nations. The money that is being borrowed to us to cope for this crisis rather than development, debt payments, draining resources from our climate adaptation or resilience, and then making us more vulnerable to the next crisis. And then this cycle, it deepens, it continues. And the cruel part of this is that the same countries that caused the climate crisis through historic emissions are still our creditors. So we are basically owing those that are causing the main issue, and that is where the climate colonialism comes in. And so from the angle of debt to climate anxiety, we no longer want it as relief, grants, and the likes. We seek for total debt cancellation, and calling on the global north who we owe as a climate debt, for them to cancel this debt so that we would be able to use this funding to focus more on the development in Africa. And also, I will speak more on the fossil fuel expansion. No more gas pipelines, coal plants disguised as development and then funded through more debt for us. Nigeria is in a lot of debt, and if you go through the debt document, you would see that even after you've paid the debt, there are some kind of payment, like an interest that keeps building on it, and it seems you have to always go back to this to debt for you to be able to do certain things in your country. And so we also request for just transition funded by justice, redirect money from debt payments to community-led renewable energy and adaptation. Now, as a young person in Nigeria, we are exposing the environmental injustices by oil companies exploring our resources. And we recently had a documentary titled The Under the Siege, I co-worked this with Ayo Fola, who was the first speaker, and it was to highlight the environmental injustice in the River State in Nigeria as regarding Shell and all other oil companies. Also in our communities, we are running like a climate education, so young people can understand that the local climate crisis is also linked to climate anxiety. And then I also started the Next Leadership Program to train and support young people to make impact in their communities. So it's not all about just telling them, it's about supporting them for them to know how they can also make an impact or lead an action in their local communities. And this is what 21st century revolution looks like from the African perspective. A non-violent action, interconnected, uncompromising, but led by those who are most impacted and affected by the climate issues. The courage, our courage, to me, courage in this context means maybe you're being called radical when you are demanding for justice, or it's like carrying your community's hope while fighting institutions with more power. Anxiety without action is despair. And so action, even against overwhelming odds, is hope made tangible. So this shows that we have hope, but then we are not naive of this. We know that one movement won't stop centuries-old systems overnight, but every time we connect on this kind of festival like what Rev21 has organized, every time we organize across borders, every time we reframe who owes whom, then we are building the foundation for the world we need. This festival is called We Decide to Remake the World. African youth have decided, and we have decided that debt is illegitimate to us. Our futures aren't negotiable. Climate colonialism needs to end with our generation. And that is why I ask you today, what have you decided? Because remaking the world requires all of us in our different contexts, in our different skills, in our different walks of life, deciding together that another world is not just possible, it is a necessity. It is necessary for us, it is necessary for our children, it is necessary for the next generation. And Africa is rising not in violence, but in clarity. We know more now, we know better, and we have the support that we need, just like what Rev21 is doing. And we are not doing this alone, not in isolation, but in solidarity. So join us and let us continue to remake this world for what we really want. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Esther. Incredibly powerful. And thank you so much for highlighting the fact that colonialism is, as per always, the big reason for the world's fuckers. So yeah, I thank you for that. Edwin, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ed, and everyone on the call. It's really an honor to be speaking here and also sharing the African perspective and the climate anxiety issue we're experiencing as advocates, activists from different African countries. Yeah, my name is Edwin Makanga. I'm a climate justice advocate from Uganda, and I'm a founder of Ingowefe Initiative, which is mainly focusing on the aspect of climate mobility, whereby communities are displaced because of the climate change impacts. I would start with giving a brief example of what's happening in my country, Uganda, of what some of the experiences or the impacts we are experiencing in climate change in my country. I would start with northern Uganda, especially. I don't know if you've heard of the Karamoja region. It's mainly hit with the prolonged drought issue, which result into water scarcity, food shortages, and then because this community is fully for pastoralists, people move from different places with their animals to other places, and that's a form of displacement because the area can't sustain or it can't feed the people in this community in terms of, let me say, grass, pasture, or the water, because of the prolonged drought issue, you find these families migrating from one area to another area. And this is the reality they have been going through for over years. And in the eastern region where I come from, my village, we experience a lot of landslides, floods, and this has been happening yearly. It depends in months, especially during the rainy season, and you find that this mudslide. I would give an example of an area called Namesi. It's between the mountain Elgon and out. This is the curve, so it's between mountain Elgon and so there was a family. When I happened to interact with these people, I reached out to them and they told me what happened in 2019. So this was the area. It was a very busy trading center. So one fateful night, it rained, like it was drizzling for longer hours. So after, like at around 7 p.m., they had like a blast from top of the hill, the top of the mountain, and then stones started coming down, and then it hit people who were there, and then the mudslide covered the people who were in that area, and the biggest majority died. Over 200 people lost their dear lives, and then like after the rain, after that incident, it covered all the trading center, all the buildings. Many people lost their plantations, and the Ministry of Disaster and Preparedness came in, but then they just came in because there was media, just to cover, just people to see them that they're there. But then these people are still feeling the impacts up to now, and that's one of the reality what's happening on ground in these people's areas. And you find that they find themselves moving from their ancestral places to much safer places, but because they don't have the resources in terms of, let me say, getting another piece of land or a source whereby they can be able to sustain themselves, they find themselves staying in that most risky area. And then after some few months or after some few years, they find themselves again experiencing the same thing. And according to the UBOS, that's Uganda Bureau of Statistics, it gave a figure of about 1,000 people have been displaced because of the climate. 100,000 people have been displaced in Uganda because of the climate change issues like the landslides, floods, and then the prolonged drought issue. So that's the reality we experience because people, as Esther mentioned earlier, that we people in Africa or people in the global south countries contribute less of the CO2 emissions, and yet we suffer the most the climate change impacts. And according to the Paris Agreement, we see it is the historical responsibility for developed nations first, and then the big oil corporations to pay for the losses and damages which we are experiencing back at home in our countries. Because this thing doesn't only affect us emotionally, it affects us psychologically, it affects us physically. We lose our friends, we lose our families, we lose our dear people, we lose our families, we lose our heritage, we lose our culture because of the climate impacts happening over time. And you find that in the long run, this thing can affect your mental issue, and then you feel that you lose that hope of you seeing that maybe there will be a change, maybe there won't be a change. And I would give an example of the COVID-19 incidents or COVID-19 pandemic, which happened in 2020. You saw how the whole world was under pause because of that pandemic. Now, just imagine right now we are at around 1.2 degrees Celsius, and we are seeing typhoons in Philippines. We are seeing floods in my country, Uganda. We are seeing oil spills in Nigeria. We are seeing a lot of impacts happening. So now just imagine, how about if we exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius? What will really happen? Like, all the world might be at a pause. But the good thing is that the people are getting aware of what's really happening. You see young advocates like Ayo, you see Comfort, Esther, Jesse. Everyone is using their space. Jesse, I know him as a person who uses music to share the message of climate. Ayo is so much into climate education. Esther, I see she's so into putting pressure on the fossil fuel companies or fossil fuel people to pay for the losses and damage they are causing in our communities. Because all these profits, all these people in those higher spaces, they're mainly focusing on themselves, but not the people. That's why we need to put the people about, we need to consider people, not profits. I'll give a live example of what's really happening in my country. So when people talk about climate change, they only talk about numbers, emissions, degrees, the deadlines to meet. Like right now, we are speaking, COP30 is happening, but this is what's in the spaces, the numbers, the degrees, the emissions. But in my country, Uganda, climate change is about children missing schools because of the floods, which have washed away the roads where they're going to use to reach the school. Families going hungry because their farms were washed away, their homes were destroyed. Women just walking about 10 to 15 kilometers just to find clean water. And young people losing hope because most of us, I know the majority of the young people who are in this call, they have attended COPs. And I know how you feel after the COPs, all those high level UN events happen. You feel unheard. You feel that your voice is not represented. You feel that the people you are representing in those vulnerable communities is not heard. We feel like we are losing hope. This is what we feel. But I feel that climate change is not just an environmental issue. It's a social, economic, and a cultural, whereby it really connects with the people. Like right now, we are on this webinar from different countries, but having one voice to demand for climate justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edwin, for grounding everyone in the realities of what the climate crisis actually means, and also highlighting what the Western governments are knowingly and actively doing and causing to people around the world, and why it's everyone in the Western world's duty to do everything that they can to topple this capitalist structure. So thank you for that, Edwin. Comfort, I'd like to pass over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm happy to be here today and to have the opportunity to speak at this webinar. My name is Comfort Aper Francis, and I serve as the Global Coordinator for Scientist Rebellion Nigeria. So I'm going to be building on what Edwin has spoken about, and I want to speak the truths that we often avoid. You know, Africa is experiencing climate change, and it's not just experiencing climate change alone, it's experiencing climate violence. So for decades, we've seen how our continent has been treated as the world extractive site: oil, gas, mineral, forest, taken at scale, exported for profit, while communities are left with pollution, poverty, and conflict. This is what we call exploitative extractivism, and I would say the perfect example for this is the Nigerian's Niger Delta. It's a really great example of what exploitative extractivism is, and it's also one of the deepest drivers of climate anxiety amongst Nigerian youths, I would say, because we've seen this impact firsthand and what it has done to communities. From the Niger Delta's oil spill to the Sahel resource fight, we can see what's happening in Congo and in Sudan. We see how extraction is fueling instability. Communities are losing their lands, their water, their health, and even their safety. Armed groups are exploiting mining sites. Governments are protecting foreign interests over its own people. All this to fuel overconsumption, using the latest gadget that has just been released. And the climate crisis is amplifying all of this. We can see more drought, more heat, more desperation. It's just everywhere. So we as African youth, we are not just anxious. I'll lead myself on as an example. I'm not just anxious because I don't understand what the climate crisis is. I'm anxious because I understand it too well. I have seen the causes, I have seen the root cause, and I can see us living the consequences in real time. So as an environmentalist and a scientist, I have led direct actions, campaign, and public education that is focused on exposing the harm of exploitative extractivism through scientist rebellion. So we have come together to use our voices as researchers, young professionals, to demand that governments and corporations should stop sacrificing African communities for profit, which is fueling the rise of inequality. I feel like everyone on this call here can see what is happening in the world. We see how this fight for resources, we see what is happening to people, how they are living their lives. We can see videos coming out of Sudan and how cruel it is. So some of the work that I've done, they've included non-violent climate actions, where we go out to call out oil companies, insurance companies, banks, and mining companies to stop putting profit over people. And, it's very important that we come and see that we don't have any other planets. We have just one Earth, no matter what we think. And at the end of the day, humans and the environment, we are one. When you see butterflies going extinct, what do you think is going to follow next? Definitely, it might not be immediately, but you should know that the planet is dying, and at the end of the day, we might all go extinct. I don't want to spread climate doom, but we have to speak to reality as it is. I've also done public awareness campaign. I've led public awareness campaign where we are linking extraction to conflict, displacement, and climate injustice, which is so very clear. We've also done youth education programs where we teach people how oil companies, overconsumption, and greenwashing is keeping Africa in a circle of exploitation. So yes, this work is not easy. It demands a whole lot of courage because as an African youth, speaking the truth to people in power, it's not neutral, it's not easy. It demands a lot of courage. And at the end of the day, we've recognized that silence is not a choice. It's no longer an option that we can depend on. And I can see it's happening across Africa. We can see what youth are doing. In Kenya, we can see youth movements are challenging the land seizures for carbon offset schemes.
While in South Africa, we see young scientists are exposing coal pollution and environmental racism. And here in Nigeria, we are building networks of students, researchers, activists who would refuse to let extractive companies dictate our future. And I must tell you, we are not just protesting. We want to reimagine Africa's development model. And we are demanding solutions like community-owned energy, climate-smart agriculture, and projects that put people first over profit. The courage to act is not something that I would say it just came out of nowhere, but it came out of the belief that Africa's future cannot be outsourced. It cannot be bought by oil companies. It cannot even be negotiated at the halls of COP. It can only be shaped by African youths who understands the silence and the suffering, because we see it, we know it, and we know the science. So it can only be shaped by African youths that understand both the science and the suffering. So as we are gathered here today, I would want to leave us with this. I know climate anxiety is the topic and it looks like a weakness, but I will tell you, climate anxiety is not a weakness. It's a warning. It's a signal that we deeply care about the world that we are inheriting. And I see climate anxiety as a power. When it is organized, when it is collective, we can translate it into resistance, innovation, storytelling, policy pressure, where we can turn things around. So we as African youths, we are the generation that will refuse to be silent to extractivism. We are the generation that will choose fear over action over fear. The fight for climate collapse is not just about carbon. It's about dignity, equity, sovereignty, and the right to live on a continent that is not sacrificed for profit. This is the main thing that we are fighting for. So I would want us to know that we as African youths, we would continue to act loudly and boldly until our resources, people, and our ecosystem are protected and not just exploited for profit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comfort. Yeah, and it's I was saying this to someone earlier. If you're feeling climate anxiety, it's good, because my God, you should be anxious. And also, as you say, that's when you emotionally connect to the issue, and only when you emotionally connect can you actually do something properly about it. So yeah, thank you for that, Comfort. And then last but not least, Jesse, over to you.
Wow, it's a great honor to be part of this conversation, first and foremost, and to my fellow panelists who have spoken. It's indeed an honor to get to connect once again. As you have heard, my name is Jesse David. I coordinate Battery Tour Africa here in the continent. And just to give an overview of what we do as Battery Tour is music for impact, using music as a tool, as a vehicle to drive impact to the community. Because as we have said, how I entered into this climate advocacy space was first by understanding there is a gap when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to conveying the message that there is a problem somewhere and it ought to be fixed. And most young people connect with music. Everyone will dance to a tune. And at the end of the day, when it's coupled with a certain message of action for young people to act and take the lead, they will listen to it, they will connect to it. And I believe that everyone is an outlet of change. So one thing at Battery Tour that is our motto is that, or what I've just said, everyone is an outlet of change. It does not matter what you have in you. It does not matter what you do, be it you're in tech, you're doing research, you're an environmentalist, you're an actor, you're a creative, you're a dancer. Every tool you have, you can use it to power change. You can use it to convey a message, to take action. And as we have just heard from our panelists, that what they've said about the African continent, climate anxiety is real than anything else, because it's what most communities in the continent are facing day in, day out. And we have seen in our various countries, from drought to flooding, to heat waves. And it's important to have the context, the African context, of Africa being a continent with great resources, but also contributing very less when it comes to the global emissions, and also suffering the most when it comes to the adverse effect of climate change. Now, what is next for the African youth? Because right now, as you've had, COP is going on. For those of whom you're following, you've seen the deliberations that are happening there. But at some point for young people, there is the spirit of hopelessness that is my voice being heard out there? Is what I'm doing, is it really being heard? And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and I was telling him that when you zoom out and see things from a different perspective, like for example, right now, if you zoom out, you will see yourself, you will see the house, you will see the trees around you. You zoom out again, you will see the landscape, you will see buildings, you will see the rivers. You zoom out again, you will see the continent maybe. And then when you zoom out again, you will see the earth. Now, my one element is that different people will see different things. But for me, as a creative, when I see the earth, it's a piece of an art. It's like someone drew it, So what does it tell us? It tells us that more solutions for this 21st century ought to be driven from a creative point of view. It does not matter, which field you're in, but a little creativity takes it to the next level. And that is why at Bashitwa, we believe that using our gifts, our talents to power change, your passion, understanding your why from your community, from university level, when I entered into advocacy and using music as a tool of advocacy, after learning about climate change at Nairobi Summer School, and understanding that as much as I know the science, as much as I was studying in the university, what else can I use in my hands to convey the message and call other young people to take action? And that is music. So I took my guitar, I wrote a song, and that is how I was able to connect with brilliant minds like Ayo Fola, like Edwin, like Esther, and also we met at COP because of the music and seeing the amazing work they're doing at different places. It felt like home. It felt like all of us, we are championing for something together, and it does not matter where you're from. Together, we can really power impact. And just to add a little bit about why at Bashitwa is really important for us to call everyone to take action is that through our initiative at Bashitwa, we have done pop-ups, events in refugee camps, in communities, and bringing climate education closer to people while using music as the vehicle, using art as the vehicle. Most young people relate and take action. And just from what we are talking about, from anxiety, we have seen that young people are bringing innovation. Young people are organizing. Young people are influencing. Young people are partnering to power change together. And you might ask yourself, why does it matter? Why does it matter for us to be anxious, as even how Comfort said and Esther? Why does it matter? Because it's like a catalyst for young people to take action. So why does it matter? Through us having that anxiety, sometimes there is a school that will get clean water from the actions and the mobilizing that young people are doing. There is a village that will get access to power. There is a student that will learn a skill from climate education. There is a community that will get hope. There is a system will bend towards justice. So it does not go away what young people are feeling out here. It means that we have a role to play, and together we can power impact. Your gift is your outlet. Your passion is your power source, and plug into something bigger and plug into power change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Yeah, I really like what you said. I mean, I can't remember who said it, but they said something like, if I can't dance to it, then it's not my revolution. I think it's very important to counterbalance the anxiety, which you must use to actually fucking do something, with joy. Like, joy is super important. Like, otherwise we'd all just be like, I don't know, having breakdowns every 5 seconds. So yeah, thank you very much for that. So we're now in the question and answer phase of the session. I've got one or two questions I prepared already, and people in the audience, please feel free to put some questions into the feature at the bottom of the screen. But I'll start with, and this is for anyone on the panel, so please just feel free to put your hand up or just jump in. Where do you feel that, and this is carrying on from a few of the things that all of you said, but where do you feel that African youth are still being sidelined in national or international conversations?
Well, I'll go quickly. I would say it's mainly at the table where discussions regarding the young people, the youth, where it is being discussed, and then you are being sidelined from this kind of discussion. And this would come, I would say, from culture, because as Africans, we are told to be quiet, we are told to listen more, we are told to, when you speak up, you are seen as being disobedient. There's tagline for all of this, and that's built in through my work from the climate education, working with young people, primary school, secondary schools. I've seen this repeatedly, that it builds our confidence. And then where you're supposed to speak up, where your thought matters, we are told to be quiet, we are told to, this all boils down to our history from the colonialism, because it's kind of suppress our voice to speak up on things that are really affecting us. So yeah, young people are being sidelined from this kind of discussions, and that is why we continue to advocate for inclusion, equity, equality everywhere, so that these young people can also have a voice in these rooms where discussions, especially relating to our environment, to our future, are being talked about.
Thank you, Esther. Ayo, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, we're just going to add to what Esther said. I think that the conversations usually are, especially in terms of partnerships and collaborations with governments, the African society has not yet adapted the ideology of young people working with governments actively. For example, I'm going to give a very good example. I think when I was 22 was when I went to my first COP, and I didn't have a party badge. I just had a observer badge. And myself and Esther were just finishing a protest in front of COP. And I had a Sierra Leonean friend who just got tapped by a Nigerian party delegate person, and the person had a party badge, right, which means he was involved in like decision making. And he asked my Sierra Leonean friend, "What is 1.5 degrees Celsius?" And my Sierra Leonean friend looked at him, shook his head, and told me, "Ayo, someone from your country said this. What is 1.5 degrees Celsius?" And I looked at him, and it just tells you, like, what is someone who is probably 65 years old, doesn't know nothing about the climate crisis, doing at COP, where decisions are meant to be made. I think that it just highlights the ideology that collaboration, at least at this time when I was at COP, was not something that was active. I think that there are a lot of young people around the continent. Come on, think about like people like Edwin, that's always right in front of visiting communities, or Esther that goes, talks to young people like, what, you guys can be leaders, or Comfort, we is always talking to us about the science and, telling us, you guys need to balance all of this. I think that definitely the ideology of collaboration with government is something that is missing. And like Esther said, I think it's very linked with colonialism and very much linked with what we term as culture.
Thank you, Ayo. Comfort.
Okay, I would like to add to what Ayo has said. You can imagine someone, a delegate, asking what 1.5 degrees Celsius is. It's quite shameful. And I would say, as someone that works with young people, I can see how passionate they are. once they get to understand the science and understand that this is why we are facing what we are facing, they are very passionate, but they have just been delegated to the role of only protesting, which I feel like they have much more to offer if given the opportunity. Like Esther has said earlier, if they give them the opportunity to come, sit, delegate, partnership, work with the youth hand in hand, and stop working with people that you feel like I would want to call it nepotism. Yeah, so they would want to place people that they know in those positions and not giving the right people the opportunity to carry out most of these conversations, the opportunity to use their skills, to use their passion for good and all that. So providing this opportunity is something that is very important. And also, we see a lot of young people that are very passionate, they are always protesting. Another place that I see that is missing is equipping these people with the skills. It's just beyond protesting and calling out this injustice. If we can equip them with these negotiation skills that when they get to COP, they will know how to relay their messages and share their voices properly, I feel like this is going to help a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. There's another question from the audience, which I think follows on from this one quite nicely. Oh, Jesse, if you'd like to say a few words, mate, feel free.
Thank you once again. I think it's very important to understand that advocacy is important, but there is a ceiling of where now to go to the next level. Advocacy is like a vehicle that has taken you as a young person to this level. Now, how to engage the next level, and it's just it alludes to what Comfort has said, that equipping these young people with the right skills when it comes to negotiation, or what really matters when representing their country or representing their views. Because I had a conversation a while back when I was traveling to these climate conferences, and this professor told me, you are a climate activist, it's okay, but what else are you bringing to the table? What else can we engage on, in terms of policy, in terms of just transition? And it opened my mind to understand that the space is big, so we can get to relate with each other. We can get to build to the next level when it comes to skills and knowledge that will now drive impact. So just to add on that, and that is through partnership. Thank
you, Jesse. We've got about 2 minutes left, so if there's I'll ask one more question, which I think it follows on from the previous thing, which is, what do you think the main reason is for people not speaking up? Like, what is preventing them? Is it people not believing them? Is it repression? What would you suggest? Comforts.
First of all, I would say there are so many reasons to why people are not speaking up. And the first thing I would like to say is, some of the people that are not speaking up is because they don't understand what is going on. They don't understand the science of what is happening. So they might just know that, it's been getting hotter and hotter, but they don't know that it's because of climate change. So when you educate these people and tell them this is the science behind what has been happening, why there has been low crop yield and all those things, they get to understand, and you tell them this is what is causing all this, I'm sure most of them would speak up and want to, act on it. So I would leave it for other speakers to continue from where I've stopped.
Esther.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Comfort. And I would say that this issue runs deeper, and it's mostly starts from the lack of confidence, the lack of courage, the lack of awareness of the climate crisis, the lack of information on how you as an individual or a group can be a part of the solution. Personally, I've been advocating for climate change education to be added to school curriculum, because when you speak to an adult who does not even know what is going on in the environment, and then we continue to pay house rent, but then we are not paying anything to the environment, we are not giving back to the environment that is housing all of us, then there's a lot of issues. And now, myself with my team, we have identified this lack of courage, and that is why we're starting the next leadership program, so as to support young people, to give them all the support they need from identifying their purpose, identifying issues happening in their communities, and how they can be a part of this solution, how they can organize projects, how they can network with international organizations or movements like Rev21 for them to be able to organize locally in their communities. Because if something like this festival is going on internationally, and personally, if I wasn't reached out to, I do not know about it. So we should have something like this going on in Africa when this kind of programs are being is happening in internationally. So yeah, this is also my ask to Rev21 for us to see how the African group can also be more engaged and involved in this kind of festival. Thank you.
Couldn't agree more, Esther. We've got a few minutes left. So Edwin, Ayo, pass over to you both, but if you could make it semi brief. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on what my colleague said, but I'll focus on the language aspect. You see, most people, indigenous people who come to attend these high-level events, it's very hard for them to express, let me say in English, but if there is that language gap a bit bridged, it will at least be able to amplify or to share what they're experiencing in their communities. Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to say this very quick. So in Africa, the way that we see structure is that there's a leader, and this is because of colonialism. There's a leader, and whatever the leader is saying is what a lot of people follow, right? I think. And I some years back, there was a flood in Nigeria that was all over the world. Like everyone was talking about it. And the Minister of Water Resources said that it's caused by God. Now, because of the idea that people listen a lot to leadership and leadership controls media, it tells you a lot that this is why it looks like sometimes a lot of people on the ground are doing so much work, but this, like everywhere else in the world, denialism exists. So I think that what we need to really do now is increase awareness on the ground, but also put pressure on leaders to tell the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayo. And thank you, everyone else. You've been brilliant. Really enjoyed hearing you talk. And also, yeah, that's the last session of the day. Woo! Well, yeah, it's been a really fun day. I've really enjoyed it, all the talks. We've got another one tomorrow, obviously, so please make sure you come along tomorrow. We've got a really packed out day tomorrow. I don't think there's a single break. That includes both tracks. Yeah, eat your Weetabix. And please remember the pathways to action that we've got. Obviously, you can donate to Rev21 to try and make more of these happen more regularly. If you would like to take part in civil resistance, please do. There's the AX22 network there. They've got a bunch of places around Europe which do have direct action groups. And if you'd like to help out with the next festival, please sign up for an induction.